There is a cold that lives in the far north that no fire fully answers. It settles in the bones. It rides the wind off the ice fields and moves across the black water like something alive. In such cold and such darkness, the men of the Old North built their world. They raised their halls from timber and stone. They carved their gods into wood and hung iron at their belts. They crossed the sea in longships with dragon heads at the prow, and they carried with them something that other peoples did not carry, a particular relationship with fury, a particular understanding of what a man could become when the world of ordinary things fell away. On the shore, before the ships were pushed out, before the oars were set and the sails raised, you might have seen them, standing apart from the others, wrapped in skins that other men did not wear, quiet in a way that was not peaceful, still in a way that was not calm. The other warriors gave them space, not out of disrespect, out of something older and more careful than disrespect. They had a name. It was spoken quietly in the halls and loudly in the poems. It was carved into the accounts of kings and whispered in the laws of the land. The name was Berserker. And the world that produced that name was a world that understood things about the boundary between a man and something wilder that the later ages would not understand, and would fear and would eventually forbid. This is the account of those men. Not as modern minds have imagined them, but as the old sources knew them, as the sagas remembered them, as the skalds sang of them beside the fire, in the long dark, when winter pressed against the walls and the flames threw shadows on every face. Words carry history inside them. They carry the thinking of the people who made them. The word berserker is Old Norse, and it has been examined and debated by those who study the language, but even in that debate, the weight of the word is not lost. The most widely held understanding of berserker is that it means bear shirt, br from Bjorn, the bear, and serker meaning a shirt, a garment, a second skin worn over the first. The bear shirt warrior. The man who wore the hide of a bear, who wrapped himself in the great brown skin of the North's most feared animal and went to war in it. The bear in the Norse world was not simply an animal. It was the beast of the forest, the creature that walked upright, the one that could kill a man with its forelimbs, that could absorb wounds and keep moving, that could be struck and not fall. The bear was strength without mercy, endurance without end. To wear its skin was not merely a choice of clothing. It was a statement. It was an act of transformation. A man who wore the bear's skin was reaching for something the bear carried, something that human flesh could not carry on its own. There is a second meaning debated in the older scholarship of the language. Some have argued that br does not come from the bear, but from bear, meaning without covering. The bear shirt warrior. The man who went to war without armor, without the iron shirt that other men relied upon. The man who stood unprotected and fought regardless. Both meanings carry truth. Both meanings describe the same man. Whether his name came from the skin of a bear on his shoulders, or from the bear skin beneath it, the image they both build is of someone who stood between the world of men and the world of animals, between protection and exposure, between the human and the something else. The skalds did not separate these meanings with precision. The sagas used the word the way fire uses a log, completely without dwelling on the parts. To understand the berserkers, you must first understand the god they served. Odin is not a simple god. He is not a god of one thing. He is the All-Father, the Wanderer, the Hanged God, the god of war and poetry and death and wisdom and madness. He gave an eye for knowledge. He hung on the great tree Yggdrasil, wounded by a spear for 9 nights without food or water to earn the runes. He walked the world in disguise, a gray-cloaked traveler with one eye hidden, and he could not be trusted to be what he appeared. Odin knew shape. He understood that a form is not fixed. The sagas make this clear. Snorri Sturluson, writing in the Ynglinga saga which forms the opening of Heimskringla, says of Odin that his body would lie as if sleeping or dead while his spirit traveled in other shapes. A bird, a beast, moving through the world unseen. He could be a raven. He could be a wolf. He could be the wind itself. Shape was not a prison for Odin. It was a tool. And his warriors carried something of that knowledge. In Ynglinga saga, Snorri writes of Odin's men directly. He says, his men went without armor and were mad as dogs or wolves, bit their shields and were strong as bears or wild bulls and killed people at a blow, but neither fire nor iron told upon them. This is called berserker-gang. This is not embellishment added later. This is what Snorri wrote, drawing on older sources, older poems, older accounts. The description is clear and it is ancient. These men were Odin's men. Not warriors who admired Odin from a distance, or who prayed to him as one prays to a distant power. Men who carried his nature inside them. Men in whom something of his wildness, his wolf nature, his bear nature, His fury that stood outside ordinary human limits, had been lit and could be called forward in battle. The Haraldskvæði, the poem composed by the skald Odin Hornklofi in praise of King Harald Fairhair's victory at the Battle of Hafrsfjord, around the late 9th century, describes the berserkers among the king's warriors. The poem is one of the oldest records we have of them in direct verse. Thornklofi's words describe them howling, advancing, shaking their shields, the terror they spread moving ahead of them like a wave before a ship. They are called úlfheðnar in the poem, which is a different name, and we will return to that. But the fury described, the wildness, the sacred madness in service of a king who himself stood under Odin's favor. This is the portrait the earliest sources paint. The berserker-gang, the berserk going, the entering of the fury, is spoken of in the sagas as something that came upon a man. It was not simply anger. Anger is something a man holds. This was something that held the man. He did not choose the moment of its arrival. He felt it coming the way a storm can be felt in the air before the first cloud appears. And then it was upon him. The sagas are careful in their language about this. They do not explain it away. They do not reach for comfortable reasons. They describe it as a thing that happened, the way they describe a ship reaching shore or a sword breaking on a shield, as a fact, observed and recorded. In Ynglinga saga, the description of the fury is written this way: the men bit their shields. They howled. Fire did not stop them. Iron did not stop them. They were as strong as bears. They were as mad as dogs or wolves. When the fury had passed, they were weak. They were spent. A heaviness came over them, and they were, for a time, less than ordinary men. This arc, the rising, the peak, the falling away, is consistent across the sources. It is not the portrait of a man simply enraged. It is the portrait of something that moved through a man and then left him. Vatnsdæla saga records berserkers who came to Iceland, 12 of them brothers, led by a man named Jackal. They were men who fought with the fury and who, when they were not fighting, were a danger to those around them. The saga does not speak of this with admiration. It speaks of it with the particular wariness of a society that has learned to live alongside something powerful and unpredictable. The shield biting that appears in the sagas deserves to be spoken of plainly, because it is one of the most consistent details across multiple sources. It is not a symbol inserted for dramatic weight. It appears in Snorri's account. It appears in the imagery the skalds built around these men. A warrior throwing himself at his own shield with his teeth, grinding into the wood, is a warrior doing something that has no tactical explanation. It is a man at the edge of himself. It is the body expressing something that has exceeded what words or movement can contain. They went without armor. This too is consistent. Where other warriors wore iron, carried protection, the berserker stood in his skin and his hide and nothing else, and walked toward blades and fire and arrows as though these things belonged to another world that he had left behind. Whether this was a sacred practice, a statement of Odin's protection, an act of faith that the god's fury surrounding him was more than iron, or whether it was the fury itself that made him blind to danger, the sagas do not fully separate these things. Perhaps they are the same thing described from two directions. The howling. The poems speak of it. The sound the berserkers made was not the battle cry of an organized force. It was something else. It was closer to the wolf's howl, to the bear's roar, a sound that came from below the language of men and reminded those who heard it that there are older things in the world than human words. The wolf warriors. The úlfheðnar. Snorri in Ynglinga saga and Odin Hornklofi in Haraldskvæði both record them. They are related to the berserkers, but they are not the same. The distinction matters. Where the berserker wore the bear's skin and carried the bear's spirit, the úlfheðn, the wolf-coated one, wore the skin of a wolf. He was shaped by a different animal. The wolf is not the bear. The bear is solitary, immense, a creature of raw endurance and devastating power. The wolf is a pack animal. The wolf is a hunter. The wolf moves in the dark, reads the wind, circles its prey. The wolf chooses its moment. Odin, it should be noted, kept two wolves. Jerry and Freki, greedy and ravenous, sat at his feet in Valhalla. The wolf was not a creature apart from Odin. It was bound to him. And the wolf-coat warriors were bound to him in a way that carried that specific wildness, the wolf's cunning alongside the wolf's ferocity. In Haraldskvæði, it is the úlfheðnar who are mentioned by name among Harald Fairhair's elite fighters. They are described with shields shaking and wolves in their nature. Thornklofi's language is compressed and vivid, as skaldic verse always is. It does not slow down to explain. It assumes its audience already knows what a wolf-coat warrior is. This tells us something. By the time of Harald Fairhair in the 9th century, these warriors were not new. They were established enough that a poem needed no introduction for them. The wolf coats and the bear shirts are sometimes spoken of together and sometimes spoken of separately in the sources. They occupy adjacent territory in the Norse understanding of sacred war fury. They are both Odin's. They are both bound to animal skins and animal natures. But they are distinct, and the sagas treat them as distinct, and that distinction should be honored. A man who cannot be stopped in battle is valuable. A man who cannot be stopped at the feast table is something else. The sagas are clear about this. The berserkers were not simply honored warriors who lived peacefully and then became terrible in battle and then returned to being peaceable again. The fury, or something connected to the fury, made them difficult men to live alongside. Their strength and their madness did not vanish entirely when the battle ended. They were volatile. They were unpredictable. They made demands. They challenged men to duels for land, for women, for cattle, for no reason that the challenged man could name except that a berserker had decided to challenge him. Vatnsdæla saga shows this clearly. The 12 berserker brothers who came to Iceland were not welcomed as honored warriors. They were a problem. They arrived demanding things. The people they approached did not have the means to refuse them through ordinary strength, because ordinary strength was not enough. What was required was cunning, and a particular kind of courage that was different from the courage of charging into battle, the colder courage of trapping something dangerous. The saga describes how the brothers were dealt with, through the wisdom and steadiness of a man who refused to be moved by terror, who used the nature of the berserkers against them. The details of that account belong to the saga itself, and they are worth reading in full. But what they show us is that Icelandic society was not simply in awe of these men. It was also afraid of them. And it was working out, through the stories it told, how to survive them. This fear became law. The Gragas, the collection of Icelandic laws from the Commonwealth period, contains a provision against berserkers. The going berserk, the berserkr-gang, is outlawed. A man who went berserk was to be exiled. 3 years outlawry. The fury that had once been sacred, that had once been Odin's gift to his chosen warriors, was made criminal under Icelandic law. This is a striking moment. A society that had grown from the Norse world, that carried Norse culture and Norse memory and Norse religion in its bones, had decided that the berserker was no longer something to be honored and accommodated. He had become something to be expelled. The edge between sacred warrior and dangerous outlaw had been crossed, and the law had taken a side. The old gods did not die quickly in Scandinavia. The memory of them lingered in the hills and the stories and the names of days and places. But the arrival of Christianity changed the framework within which men like the berserkers could exist. In the Christian world that came to Scandinavia through the 10th, 11th and 12th centuries, the kind of sacred madness the berserkers embodied had no honored place. The battle fury that came from Odin was, in the new understanding, not a divine gift. It was something else, something to be feared, suppressed, or explained away in terms the new faith could accommodate. The kings of Norway who accepted Christianity, who brought priests and built churches, who looked to Rome and to the rest of Christian Europe, had no use for warriors whose power came from the old god of the gallows. Harald Fairhair had berserkers in his fleet, celebrated in poetry at the Battle of Hafrsfjord. But Harald Fairhair lived in a world that still had full room for Odin's men. The kings who came after, in a Scandinavia that was slowly turning, did not have that room. By the time the sagas were written down, mostly in Iceland in the 12th and 13th centuries, the berserkers were already history. They were figures from the old time. The sagas preserved them with considerable detail and in places with considerable ambivalence. They were spoken of as real. They were spoken of as powerful. They were also spoken of as men who had to be dealt with, outlawed, overcome. Hrólf's saga Kraka, the saga of the legendary King Hrólf, contains the warrior Bjarki, a man of great strength, connected to bear nature in ways the saga makes deeply felt. In the great final battle of that saga, Bjarki fights in a form that is not his human form. While his body lies sleeping in the hall, a great bear fights on the field. When he is woken, the bear vanishes and the battle is lost. The bear warrior, when torn from his trance, becomes merely a man, and a man is not enough. This moment in the saga carries the full weight of what the berserkers were understood to be. When the sacred fury was present, ordinary weapons could not touch them. When it was gone, the world closed back in. The longships are still. The dragon heads have been taken down. The oars are pulled in. The men who stood apart on the shore, wrapped in their skins, are gone now in the way that all things pass, slowly, through the wearing down of years and the coming of new ways of thinking about what a man is and what a god is and what is permitted between them. But the north is still cold. The wind still comes off the ice and moves across black water. The forests are still dark in the way they were dark then, and at the edge of the firelight, the shadows still move like something old and unresolved. The sagas remembered them. Not with simple admiration. Not with simple fear. With both at once. The way you remember something that was real and powerful and not fully explained, that the words of any single age could not fully hold. The men in bear skins and wolf skins who stood apart from other men. Who carried a fury that was not entirely theirs. Who bit their shields and howled and walked into iron and fire as though those things had no claim on them. Who were outlawed and Christianized and written into legend and then written over by the New World. They left their mark in the sagas, in the old poems, in the law that named their fury and forbade it, in the word that survives them, berserker, which carries inside it still the cold and the skin and the animal and the god. Whether they were men in whom something ancient had been kindled, something the Norse world understood as Odin's gift and the later world called a danger and the later world still called a disorder and the still later world called a legend, the sagas do not give a final answer. They give a portrait. A man standing at the water's edge in the gray light of a northern morning, his breath rising like smoke, his face turned toward the sea, wearing the skin of something that was not a man. The fire is low now. The story has been told. The cold waits outside as it always has. Thank you for watching. If you value deep, historical storytelling, please consider liking the video, subscribing and turning on notifications. More journeys into folklore and history await.